Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi there, everybody. All right. I'll tell you what, I've got massive show notes here. This is going to be a long one. I can feel it. So get comfortable because here it comes. First of all, I want to start off, again, thanking everybody for commenting on my school board speech from last week. It was beyond ridiculous, as I'm sure you heard, and of course the follow-up episode where I was describing sort of the ins and outs of it. But there's another avenue of this that I really do want to discuss just quickly here off the top. And again, one of the ex-KGB officials, Yuri Bezmenov, who I've referenced, I believe, in my book, Purposeful Deception. I kind of dive a little bit into his particular aspect of course, how you take over a country. And one of the many stages has to do with demoralization. And I think, again, that the reaction of the individuals who consistently send their children to those kinds of schools, which, let's face it, at this point, it's every public school and private school and charter school, but these individuals, again, who are sending their children into these environments and then begging for those environments to change, these individuals are demoralized, without a doubt, and they're being demoralized more and more on a day in and day out basis, and their children are being demoralized, and this is the point. This is the entire plan. This is the purpose. This is why you have individuals running away from the truth, because they cannot hear it. So, in the words of Yuri Bezmenov, I just want to read this here, and again, he's got a few quotations here that perfectly fit this, I think. Again, he was an ex-KGB agent, born in 1939, and again was an informant and a disinformation expert, it says, who defected to Canada. He's best remembered for his anti-communist lectures and books in the 1980s. He said the following here: "Exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who is demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell him nothing. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents and pictures, he will refuse to believe it. That's the tragedy of the situation of demoralization," unquote. He later goes on and again discusses how once a people's morals have been debased, that education becomes indoctrination, entertainment becomes hypnotism, criminals become leaders, and lies become truth. There is no doubt about that. Again, the simple act of an individual standing up and running when they hear something that goes against their belief system, when they themselves, of course, have no proof that their belief is a fact. The fact that they just run away instead of asking a question is the dead giveaway that these individuals are too far gone. They're too far gone. And again, it's not about even waking an individual up as much as it is reminding individuals who claim to be awake that they're the ones that actually have to get out there and remind others to be stronger. And that, again, if all we are awake people talking in echo chambers on a constant basis, then what good is it doing? I mean, we can point out particular things to particular people, and we know that a great deal of individuals are dead asleep. And to be honest, I don't know what the percentage breakdown is. I think that's one of the million-dollar questions, is how many individuals are awake to the lies that we live in and have been born into, and how many are not? And what is that percentage breakdown? I'm not sure. Again, I truly don't know what it is, but I do know, again, that when it comes to the business of trying to wake people up, I really do agree to a great extent with Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. She'll consistently say it's not my job to wake up sheep anymore. It's my job to wake up lions. And she's right about that. Again, there's a lot of individuals who are awake, but if they're not out there telling other people what's going on, and at the very least dropping a dime or two to try to, again, wake people up, or at the very least get them to ask a question, then, again, what are we doing? I'm not sure we're moving the needle in any particular direction. Which actually brings me to this, and it's kind of the hypocrisy again of Stu Peters. I've criticized him, I've complimented him. It's been interesting watching his his learning process and his maturation a little bit, but again, he does revert back to this sort of attitude of a holier than thou kind of individual, which is really unfortunate because again, he shouldn't throw stones when he lives in a glass house. But at the conclusion, in fact, it was the very next day after that school board speech, I was watching his show and he had a guest on, and he was really lecturing this guest about how things aren't going to change, nothing's going to change if all we're doing again is talking in echo chambers and if we're not getting out there and telling the truth. And again, I found that remarkably hypocritical because I thought to myself, well, Stu, I got to tell you, I haven't seen you at a school board meeting. I haven't seen you at a city council meeting. I haven't seen you walk up to anybody in public who is dead asleep and again, re enter the matrix and the actual environment where you know people are brainwashed and then drop truth bombs on them as much as humanly possible, or at the very least, try to engage in a conversation with them. I haven't seen Stu Peters do that. Again, Stu Peters goes to, particular speaking engagements where he's the keynote speaker or it's his conference or 1,000 other things. But again, he talks in echo chambers too. He's talking to people who are already awake. The trick is to re-enter the matrix in an environment where you know people are dead asleep and then tell them about something that's either going to happen in the future because we know a great deal of what's going to happen and what is happening. But these people don't even know, again, what's already taken place. That's a huge issue, as you might imagine. Again, you ask an individual to engage in any powers of reflection that they may have. If they look backwards and all they see are lies, and they come to grips with that, that's overwhelming. Again, it was a bit overwhelming with all of us. But again, once you realize that you've been lied to about one thing, and then you realize you've been lied to about 10 things, you want to uncover what those lies are. And then, of course, you end up always running into more lies and more fake stories and false history and 1,000 other things. So I understand it's exhausting for everybody, but it's something that I think has to be done from time to time. And if that's something that people have to pray about, or they have to, again, continue to think about and pick their right spot and pick their right time, then certainly do that. But, there's a lot of ways to wake people up. And there's a lot of ways to, again, remind the awake that they have a responsibility to, again, get out there and do something about it. At least that's what I think. But I don't know. We'll see what happens in the future. Again, as of right now, I don't see myself getting out there again and speaking publicly for any particular reason. I've run through a number of scenarios, of course, on this show of instances where I may do that. But I don't know. We'll see. Never say never on this one, I think. But either way, we'll see what happens. Regarding the school board speech, though, I want to revisit one other thing. And this is something I'm certain that school board is going to do in the future. And I frankly hope they do it. Because all it's going to do is continue to prove to people how totalitarian they are and how brainwashed they are. After my talk there, if I was a betting man, I would say that they're not going to let me back into that building ever again. Of course, I'll never return, so they'll be wasting their time. But either way, they'll probably say that he's never allowed back here, and if we see him, then we'll make sure and remove him and ask him to leave because, he's activating people. And again, their use of that term was beyond ridiculous. You're activating people. Well, stop using made-up terms that Marxists create and just, think and ask a question from time to time. But they don't do that, and they're never going to do that. That's why they're dangerous. That's why these environments are remarkably unsafe. But the second thing I think that, of course, they'll do is they'll make a motion and they'll rule on it that anybody who speaks in the public forum there, or certainly toward the end of their meetings, is going to have to be somebody who lives in the area. I don't think they're going to let people who don't live there speak there anymore. And like I told you, I didn't fill out my address or phone number or anything like that. I mean, hell, I don't even live in the state. But they're going to make a motion to, again, limit people's free speech and limit what, who and what can be said and discussed and 1,000 other things. I'm certain of it because they have no other choice. I mean, they do have a choice. They could ask questions. They could have a Q&A. They could extend the amount of time that people are allowed to talk. They could put the public comments toward the front of their meeting instead of at the dead end because they know that, again, people aren't going to show up late in the evening and want to engage in a conversation with anyone and certainly have their say with the school board. That's why they put it at the very end of their school board meetings. Again, it was pushing 10 o'clock at night by the time I spoke. That right there, again, the school board knows exactly what they're doing. They're trying to discourage people from showing up. So back to Yuri Bezmenov very quickly, you have the demoralized demoralizing others on a constant basis. And that, again, is the strategy, because demoralization is all they know, because it's all they've experienced, and they don't even know it. And you're talking multiple dimensions down a wavelength of thought in brainwashing that they themselves are never going to crawl out of. And again, that's the other reason why no one should ever go into these environments ever again, nor send their children. Again, let me give you another example. I just saw this video the other day. It was, again, it proves the brainwashing. It proves the stranglehold that these environments have on people and the minds of these individuals. There was an Irish woman, and she's speaking in a neighboring town of Dublin, outside of Dublin, of course. But she says, "I'm from Dublin, and I come here, on a weekend, week out basis for the most part, almost every weekend." And she's standing again out in public on the street with a microphone, and there's some people gathered around, so you think. And she's talking again about how the population, the Irish population anyway, in Dublin is approximately 85% foreign. That it's just illegal aliens. That she said in this particular speech that, she'll go to the grocery store and she won't hear an Irish conversation among Irish individuals. And then unfortunately, she starts talking about her daughter and sending her daughter to school in Dublin. And she says, again, her daughter can't recognize the conversations among her quote-unquote friends, and she calls them her daughter's friends. So she goes to school, and the vast majority of them, again, are foreigners. They're illegals. So again, she's referencing the unnatural environment that is Dublin, Ireland, and then, of course, her own young daughter's elementary school or middle school, whatever it may be. Again, that's not a safe environment. But here you have a woman who has the courage and the energy to stand out in public in front of a microphone and talk to complete strangers about the situation in Dublin, Ireland, and then, of course, the situation regarding her daughter's school and how unnatural all of it is. And at the same time, she keeps sending her daughter to this school. That sounds dangerous. Again, it's filling up with illegals who, again, are speaking their native tongue. They aren't learning English. They're speaking their own native tongues and reverting back to that. And then everybody else is just basically a foreigner in their own country. Anybody who's Irish, anyway. Again, this is why I'm an abolitionist. I don't think for a minute that any government institution is going to change for the better. And I think that anybody who believes that that's the case, or anybody who's quote-unquote fighting or advocating for that to be the case, I'm sorry. They're not on my side. They just aren't. These individuals are too far gone also. They're trying to prop up a house of cards with toothpicks on a foundation of quicksand, and they have to be done away with. And, I mean, these institutions have to be done away with. If you eliminate the institution, then these predators and these brainwashed individuals will have nowhere to go. I mean, they will simply either cease to exist or they'll just disappear into the ether, but we won't have to listen to them or see them ever again. I mean, I'm sure you're like me in that, I get tired of the nightly news stories of all of the perversion and everything else that we're hearing about. Many stories, of course, I'm going to bring up here in this episode, but we will stop hearing of that if we stop trying to prop up the institutions themselves that are allowing for all of this to take place. It's not that all bad people will be gone when we eliminate, these government institutions like schools. But if we eliminate them with our lack of participation, in my humble opinion, that's the step in the right direction. And I just think that that's the way that it has to be. But unfortunately, again, you're talking about generational demoralization and brainwashing and being born into this environment and this kind of wavelength of thought, which is not thinking at all. It is an absence of thought. So, again, excuse me, that's a tough nut to crack. I fully understand, but the more and more that people just continue to participate in these kinds of environments, the worse off they're going to be, and frankly, they're not going to make it because everybody's playing follow the leader, and no one's really leading either. Again, that too is a bit of is certainly a bit of brainwashing and the illusion of leadership. It's not leadership if an individual is just taking orders and then telling other people to take orders. There's no leadership characteristic in that. So there you go. I don't know. I could keep rambling about it, but I think you understand exactly where I'm coming from on this. You can't fix these environments. You can't fix this wavelength of thought. So there you go. Okay. Let me mention this too. This was something that happened last week also. Again, the timing was rather interesting. And this is something, unfortunately, that tends to happen certainly on election years and during the entire year where many elections are taking place, but certainly a presidential election. Free speech platforms are usually the first to go and the first to be heavily attacked during an election year. And as it turns out, Gab, the social media platform of which, of course, I am on also, their owner, Andrew Torba, has made a terrible, terrible decision regarding his entire company there. And basically, what he's doing is he's charging individuals now to basically become a Gab Pro member, which is you pay $100 and then essentially this gold ring goes around your little icon picture. And then he's basically now saying that you have to pay $100 a year in order to post memes or videos. And unfortunately, he's claiming that it's because of storage space. Now, me personally, again, excuse me, I think that Andrew Torba's lying. It's pretty evident that he is a liar and has been lying, and he's gaslighting individuals and trying to trick his customers. As you might expect, this is a bad business move because no ethical or logical businessman or woman would ever make such a decision and certainly start off by spitting in people's faces, making fun of them, and then criticizing them, and then ultimately, again, not providing any explanation as to why he's doing what he's doing, and then just say, this is the way it's going to be from now on, deal with it. A lot of people have given a lot of money to Gab, and a lot of people have worked very hard to make that social media platform successful. And again, what's interesting is that a lot of individuals have Gab accounts, but when they are out in public or they're on camera or they're on other people's channels or other people's stations or whatever it may be, they're not talking about Gab. They're not talking about Gab as a social media platform, even though they themselves are on that platform. The social media platform that everybody still hears about is X. And of course, everybody's still calling it Twitter. But that's the one, again, that gets the most airtime. That's the one that's also the most heavily criticized. And yet people keep criticizing it, and then they're like, hey, have you seen what's on X? Man, X sucks. But hey, have you seen what's on X? And it's like, pick one. Which is it? You either like it or you don't. It's either a good platform or it isn't. Again, people are making Elon Musk memes left and right, and it's a free speech platform. It's pretty evident it isn't. It's rather evident that that's the case. It is not a free speech platform. They censor, they shadow ban, they delete accounts. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what the person is saying. If they don't like what you're saying or what you're posting, they will shadow ban you or delete you. That still happens over there. So again, people are gaslighting themselves now. And again, regarding Gab more specifically, it's been said again that Andrew Torba claims that there's over 1 million people on Gab. Well, if that's true, then he could ask for $1 from each individual, and that's $1 million, which has been written about in numerous articles about him and, of course, this business decision. But if that's true, and you really do have 1 million people who are tuned into Gab and bouncing around that social media platform, then raising money shouldn't be that tough. You simply make a request like what you see, again, when you open up somebody's website. It says, hey, want to make a donation? We want to keep this place going. Make a $1 donation. People would do that. But when you look at people and you say, give me $100 or else, you're not allowed to post pictures of your dog. I mean, that's just somebody being an asshole. there's there's no way around it. It's just, you're an asshole. So there's a lot of other nefarious ties that he has. I mean, he's got a Jewish financier. He's got an individual again who's attempting to run Gab Pay, which I don't think that's ever taken off, and I don't think it's something that anybody even participates in. Again, their online store is pretty weak. It's just a bunch of overpriced garbage for the most part. I understand people want to sell stuff and cut back on what they own and make a little bit of money. I fully get it. But at the exact same time, it's like, look, what's your bread and butter? What got you here? What's the thing that made Gab in the first place? Gab became a place for people to go to connect and learn a great deal of information in a short amount of time because other social media platforms were kicking people off and engaging in censorship and, of course, violating everybody's constitutional right to free speech. And then, of course, all the congressional hearings that have happened as a result of all of that. And again, they never bring in Andrew Torba to those congressional hearings, and they very easily could, but they don't. They could line him up right next to a Mark Zuckerberg or an Elon Musk or whomever from Twitter or X or whatever the hell you want to call it, and then have them, go back and forth, and Torba would be called an anti-Semite and 1,000 other things. And again, I've run through those scenarios in the past in previous episodes before as to what that would look like, but they don't do that because, again, they're fearful of the content that's on Gab. But that's only because, again, the people who aren't over there are brainwashed, and they don't want to learn, and they aren't interested in thinking and connecting dots and 1,000 other things. But I don't know. Again, it's just a bad business decision. In war, you have to understand the landscape, and you have to know that keeping things the same and consistent as a business owner is the best thing that basically you can do, certainly in a war, and certainly during an election year, when everybody's lives are about to change, and they really are. Again, I remember when Vote got kicked off in 2020 on Christmas Day. That was a massive chat platform and a massive chat board where people went and they got the truth. And then, of course, they were bought out. And they were bought out by the Jewish lobby. And then the Vote, the entire website tanked and it ceased to exist. Now, there's another Vote that does exist, and it's up and running, and it's a free speech platform. And you can go over there and say whatever you want, and post whatever videos you want, and memes, and so on and so on. But it doesn't get the traffic, that the last Vote platform did. And as soon as Torba made this decision, of course, a number of people started criticizing him and calling him names, myself included, and individuals started getting off of that platform. And then, of course, digging into his past a little bit and bringing up a number of other things. And yeah, it's remarkably shady. But just wanted to mention that, again, I'm still going to be on Gab. I still have a Gab account, but I'm not going to pay him. Again, I've been a Gab Pro member since I've been on Gab, which has been since, I believe, January of 2021. But I'm done after, once my pro account gets pulled, or that expires rather, I'm not going to pay because it's just not worth it. I can't support something like that. I can't support an alleged businessman who spits in the faces of his own customers and then, puts his hand out and wants some money. I don't like that at all. So there you go. That's my 2 cents on Torba, but he's made a horrible decision. And I'm glad people are calling him out for the horrible decision that he's made. Again, either somebody got to him or he's making excuses, but endless people had numerous solutions to his alleged problem. And he's refusing to basically heed those warnings, and that's on him. So there you go. Okay. Quick little history lesson here before I dive into some education stories, and God, do I have a ton. Again, one last word here on Stu Peters. I found this, again, remarkably ironic because, again, Stu would lead people to believe that he's actually seen the documentary Europa: The Last Battle. He's been on social media talking about it, and it's evident that he hasn't. And if he had, well, he needs to go back and watch it again and take more notes because he's repeating some old habits that really drive me up the wall. And you probably know where this is going. Again, it has to do with word usage. Because again, if we learn the truth about particular things, we have to do our best to never repeat those lies. Again, the lies that we were all raised with, regardless of the subject, whatever it is, we shouldn't be repeating the same kinds of things that are not true. So here was the segment. You can go back and watch it yourself if you're interested. But Stu Peters had on Jason Voorhees, who's a Google whistleblower, allegedly, from back in the day, again, regarding Google's DEI programs and their discrimination and 1,000 other things. And then, of course, Jason Voorhees ran to James O'Keefe, and then a GoFundMe got set up, and Jason Voorhees got all this money from, I don't know, naive donors or whoever else. You know, he's supporting free speech, and he's a real whistleblower. Okay. Anyway, basically what ended up happening is they had a segment about Google's Gemini AI system and all of that, which, of course, made the headlines last week and the week before. And basically how, again, if you would type in, generate a picture of the Pope, it would be a black woman dressed up like the Pope. And that it was very difficult to essentially find a white person doing what a white person would do, or historically speaking, in a stereotypical white situation, or whatever it may be. Anyway, they were going through some of these generated images, and they came across a bunch of them, of course, like a black Viking, and then they came across a black German soldier, who again is dressed up in typical World War II German uniform, basically. And then he leans back in his chair and he says, "Now, I don't know about anybody else, but I don't recall there ever being black Nazis." And again, I mean, it's kind of funny, but he again uses the derogatory term Nazi, which means Ignatz. And the German people didn't call themselves Nazis, and they didn't call themselves Ignatz, and they didn't call themselves stupid. This is not what they did. I've been over the history of that derogatory term, and it's just really disappointing as to how many people keep saying it. And then, of course, he brings up this fake location called Nazi Germany. Well, there was no such place. It doesn't exist. It's not a location on a map. Again, this is the problem with Stu Peters, is that he claims to be learning particular things, but then he's not applying what he learns. Not to mention no one's correcting him on, no one's ever correcting him on this. He even mispronounces the word sword on a constant basis. He actually pronounces the W in the word sword, and he pronounces it sword. I mean, it's, it's laughable. But either way, he leaned back in his chair, he looked at Jason Voorhees, and he said, "No, I'm no historian, but I don't recall there actually being any black Nazis." And Voorhees goes, "Yeah, there weren't." And then that was pretty much the end of it, and then they moved on to other subjects. But as it turns out, you don't have to be a historian to know the truth about particular subjects. All you have to do is just look them up and think for a little while. As it turns out, again, the German army was arguably one of the most diverse armies that existed in World War II, because you basically had everyone from North Africa all the way to the highest regions of Europe, as far east as you can imagine and almost as far west as you can imagine, fighting for the German army. This is a fact. So were there black Nazis, quote unquote? Northern Africans, you bet. Absolutely. But they weren't Nazis. They just fought with the German party. That's what they did. In fact, I put all of that on Gab so that people could see again just his general hypocrisy and his unwillingness to ask a question and let alone even look it up. But this isn't difficult information to look up. Again, you can put this in just about you can ask that question in just about any search box, and you dig around enough, you're going to find the answer. So I came across this, and I just wanted to read it very quickly. Again, it's a history lesson. This is important. It says, during World War II, how ethnically diverse were German and Russian military units? Were they more diverse or less compared to U.S. units? The answer that was provided here said the following. It says, you simply do not surpass the Wehrmacht and the Waffen-SS in ethnic diversity. These two organizations between themselves deployed in various numbers personnel from more than 80 different ethnic groups all over Eurasia, the Eurasian landmass, it says. It says pretty much every ethnic group existing under that vast stretch of territory under German control, and some of those that weren't, fought for the German military, with motivations ranging from ideological sympathy to forced conscription. You name it, and it is pretty much guaranteed that at least one of them fought with the Wehrmacht or the Waffen SS. In 1944, a full quarter of the German ration strength in the East were made up of the Hilfsweger, if I'm saying that right, Soviet volunteers fighting for the German forces, usually equipped and uniformed and trained identical to the German Landster. Alone, it says. A whopping half of the people who served in the Waffen SS over its existence were not German. Again, in another post that I put on there, it says this, and I'm just kind of skipping through it just for the sake of brevity, but it says the Spanish sent 2 full division equivalents, and the Portuguese sent volunteers. A regiment of Indians was raised, but not sure if it fought. Hundreds of thousands of French, Scandinavian, and other European countries, including the Irish, fought for Nazi Germany. Of course, Nazi Germany's not a place. Again, Russia, as did Polish and Croatian Catholics, Romanian Orthodox Christians, and Sunni Islamic Turks. It says Libyans and Egyptians were used as intelligence agents in North Africa, as were Berbers and Tunisians. A few Koreans and Japanese individuals also ended up fighting for the Germans, as did thousands of Italians after the 1943 collapse of Italy. Ukrainians and Belarusia contributed at least 100,000 plus troops each on the front line and several times more in their rear lines. It says ethnic Russian POWs were armed and an entire Russian army was formed, which fought with a lot of ferocity against their former compatriots. It says volunteers from all white and Christian nations fought for Germany is a fact most people overlook. The Red Menace, aka USSR, was the enemy then, unquote. So again, any particular area that Germany liberated, many of those individuals fought with Germany. So again, Stu Peters, Zach Voorhees, you would do well to think, ask questions, and obtain internet skills larger than a first grader so that you can look up, actual facts while they still exist anyway. Or at the very least, go back and watch Europa the Last Battle and take notes. So there you go. Okay, on to education stuff. This is going to be long, and this is messed up. Got some stories to tell. Let me start with this one. This was sent my way, and this is public information, so I'm not telling anything out of school here. But the other day, and this is where I live now, the school district apparently, and this was, I believe, in an elementary school, they essentially had a breach in their security. And this is something, again, that is bouncing around emails and bouncing around Facebook posts among individuals, certainly those associated with the school board. But long story short, what they ended up having was a Miami University student who was associated or is associated with an online news outlet here in town, which is a hard left-wing outlet called the Oxford Observer. They basically had this student enter the building at the exact same time that students were entering the building, and they just walked right in. Again, they apparently didn't make any kind of an appointment, or if they did, they violated the agreement of the appointment or whatever it was, but they were dressed in a very odd way, and then they just walked right into the building. Again, as all the students were walking right into the building as they're getting off of the bus or whatever they're doing as they're walking in the morning hours, essentially. The individual was detained rather quickly, and then they were questioned, and then, of course, asked to leave, and that's essentially it. The problem is, as you might expect, that continues to show a lack of awareness in these environments. Again, anybody can walk into these environments anytime they really want. I remember, again, when I moved back here, I actually walked into the elementary school to go say hello to my old fifth grade teacher, who was still working there at the time. and they were on the verge of retirement. They were close. But my dad reminded me that she still worked there. And I remember thinking, like, well, that'd be interesting to go see her. And I did. And it was a nice visit. Again, nice woman. She looked exactly the same. And we were talking about the business and how messed up it is and a couple other things. And then that was essentially it. But I walked right into the building. Now, keep in mind, this was after the Sandy hoax. I mean, this is after all of that stuff. So, I just parked my car. I walked right up to the front door. The front door was wide open. I just walked right in. And then I walked right into the main office. I could have shot up the whole place if I wanted to. Of course, I wasn't going to do that because I'm not a psycho. But the point is these places, there was a time, even after these so-called real events, they don't even lock their own doors. I mean, they don't even have security guards standing at particular places and paying attention to a number of different things. So, again, it shows a complete lack of awareness. It shows a total breakdown in communication. And unfortunately, I think it continues to also show something that's rather, I don't want to say it's petty, but it's something that has to stop. School administrators have to stop associating with universities. They're not going to because, of course, they're both left. And they're certainly on the hard left spectrum of things. But why on earth is anybody in that school district giving any interview to a left-wing rag that's associated with the university and associated with the town? Again, if you want safety and you want security, then you should halt all kinds of meetings like that. You don't even want to propose the invitation that somebody has an opportunity to just freely walk into a building without, again, going through the appropriate process first, walking through a particular door or, walking into the main office and then checking in and then getting a pass and 1,000 other things. Again, in the elementary school where I walked in to go have a conversation with my former teacher at the time, they had one of those keypads or buzzer-related things with a speaker attached to it on the outside of the door. I mean, it was there, and the doors, of course, were supposed to be locked, and then, of course, you press the button, and then somebody on the other end in the main office hears the buzzer and then says, okay, somebody's at the door, and then you say, why you're there, and then they say, okay, we'll let you in. And then they let you in, or somebody comes to get you, and so on and so on. Again, they had that process right there, and they weren't even using it. So again, it's always human error. I mean, this always boils down to human error. But what these people haven't figured out is that error can happen one time, and then somebody really gets their head broken in. So again, I just wanted to mention that because that was rather comical. Certainly shows, again, a heightened state of stupidity among individuals, and then, as you would expect, they were quick to blame the student, and rightfully so, but at the exact same time, who made the appointment? Did anybody make the appointment? Was there an appointment? And in typical superintendent fashion, he ran to the defense of the school and the people who work there and 1,000 other things and said this was the fault of the student and they should know better, and, if there's an appointment for a meeting, then he has to make it, and they have to follow up appropriately with the policies and procedures of our school district, and blah, 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 blah. Well, how about you just disassociate? How about you just do that? So much easier that way. But, man, these problems, they bring them on themselves, I'm telling you. It's a constant thing. It's an ever-present element in all of this. Let me bring this back very quickly to Oxford, Michigan. This was a post that I received on Gab, and it's almost like it came from somebody who was in that particular district after I spoke there. But I just want to read the post here, and here's what they said. Again, you talk about the things that should have been in place in that environment that clearly weren't. They say the following: facts, and then it says 11:30, which of course was the day of the shooting then in 2021. It says 11:30 is a state cover-up. Reason: 11:30, no in-school daily security bathroom monitoring in between classes. Why? 11:30, Oxford High School SRO and security guard absences and their omission under their scope of work. Results: 11:30, school was left unarmed and no bathroom monitored, unlike the other days when security staff present and bathrooms monitored, and this parent has proof. Now, I'll add one thing real quick before I finish the post. Allegedly, there was a female security guard there who did carry a gun, who used to work for, I believe, the sheriff's department to some extent. So they used to be a deputy. But either way, with that aside, it continues and it says OHS security bathroom surveillance truth. On I guess it would be April of 2021 at 1:45 p.m. performed versus the November 2021 at 1:51 p.m. not performed. It says a parent's job isn't to secure and monitor school bathrooms. That was, quote unquote, the SRO and security guard job, both absent on 11:30, the time tragedy occurred, posted by a gun-free mom. And they said, P.S. on 2/28, Oakland Press of this year, the Oakland Press announced District Court Judge Nicholson is retiring on April 1st of this year, before her term ends. This is the judge who allowed vindictive maliciousness prosecution of the parents, unquote. Again, everything surrounding that is dirty. I really don't know what else to say. You know, I just wrote, by the way, a Substack over the weekend very quickly, just asking the question as to whether or not Ethan Crumbley was jabbed. Seems like a logical question to ask, I think. But again, you know, we know the side effects of the jabs. We know what they're doing. We know the demoralization that was currently taking place and certainly taking place back then. We know that one of the deans of the school, that his sole job, as he testified to in court, was to basically make sure that students were wearing their masks. So he's running around the school building yelling at everybody to put their masks on their faces. Again, this was difficult for a lot of people, and it was all based on a lie. So again, joke's on everybody, but that's what happens when you believe endless lies. People end up getting killed because you blindly follow along with these lies, thinking that they're real when they're not. And then that always has consequences, but they act like it never has consequences. Again, was Ethan Crumbley jabbed? Did that play a role in his frame of mind? Prion disease, mental deterioration, 1,000 other symptoms, and all of the documentation, again, that came out regarding Pfizer and the side effects of the shots, or the intentional side effects of the shots? Seems like a valid question to ask. Again, his mother testified in court that she was basically a nervous Nelly regarding all of the, mask wearing, and every time somebody would have a cough, she would make a doctor's appointment. I mean, it's almost a certainty that Ethan Crumbley was jabbed. Now, again, the only reason that he wouldn't be is basically because back then, certainly during the summer of 2021, you couldn't get a COVID shot. You couldn't get a COVID bioweapon shot if you were a minor, if you were below the age of 18. But again, by the time that late August, early September rolled around, that's when Pfizer and the FDA approved it for 18 and younger, 12 to 18-year-olds. Well, that's right where Ethan Crumbley fits. So again, what are the odds that Ethan Crumbley would have received 1 or 2 shots, Pfizer shots, or some other shot, between September 1st and November 30th of that year? Again, colleges, as you recall, were pushing it on individuals to basically have 3 shots by the time they came back, or certainly have 3 shots by the beginning of November of that year, once Pfizer and the FDA dropped that age restriction and lowered it down to, again, ages between 12 and 18 years old. So, again, it's an element. It's just another variable in the equation of that entire story that, again, people are not considering. And I ask a series of questions in that very brief article, and I basically, again, just say, given the state of affairs here, has anyone considered that the mental deterioration of the people still attending these environments is playing a role in what's going on within these environments, let alone setting someone up to become violent within those environments as a result of, again, being jabbed and having that juice do what it does inside of the human body and certainly within the central nervous system. So, I don't know. Just wanted to mention that too. Again, people aren't considering these things, kind of a big deal. Let me get to these stories too. 2 out of Virginia. These were sent my way by a listener of the show. They know who they are, and thank you for sending them. Hope to get them on as a guest here in the near future. They're a university insider, and it'd be nice to talk to them. Anyway, this is from cardinalnews.org, and it is titled, Franklin County will close 2 elementary schools this summer despite community resistance. It says the county will plug a significant state funding gap by closing Burnt Chimney and Henry elementary schools. One of the schools is called Burnt Chimney. It sure is, Burnt Chimney Elementary. Weird. Meanwhile, it says similar discussions have begun in neighboring Bedford County. Again, the reason for these schools closing is vast. There are many reasons. It's not just, again, the bioweapon shots. It's not just people dying. It's not just individuals not wanting to be school teachers anymore, and they're having a hard time, again, finding employees, let alone keeping them and retaining them. But, again, there is a lowered birth rate, and that is a big problem here too. And of course, as we know, generationally speaking, the shots are going to have a massive impact on that. And unfortunately, if people live long enough to reach the point where they think that they can reproduce or they even want to, if they took the shots, they're going to find out the hard way that maybe they can't. And again, this is an issue, but these are all of the elements that are leading to these schools closing. And yes, more people are homeschooling their children, as they should. The unfortunate part, as you might expect, is that there are endless people in the area who cannot imagine not sending their children to these environments. They don't even know what that looks like. Well, what am I supposed to do with my child? I thought I was supposed to give it to government and let government teach it and let government mold its mind. Again, they don't even ask questions about homeschooling. They don't even think about it. And then they beg for these environments to remain when these environments are the actual problem and have been. Here's another one. Again, same website. Stewartsville parents voice concerns over possible school closure. Bedford County is weighing 4 options, all of which involve closing Stewartsville Elementary School. Again, it's not just one county, and it's not just one state. This is happening all over the place, and these stories are popping up constantly. Schools closing, again, trying to consolidate all their students into one building instead of having 2. They want to sell it to somebody. Maybe they have a buyer, 1,000 other things. They can, again, bring in some more money, so they think. But of course, with less students there and with closing schools, they're still losing money because they don't have enough rear ends in classroom seats. Again, that's the ball that gets kicked down the hill that's very difficult to get back. When schools start to close and less people show up, the state isn't going to give you the money that you need because they base that on student population. So that's the slow decline, and I love it, frankly. It's got to happen. These places have to cease to exist. And again, I can already hear people screaming and shouting at me from miles away, saying, "How dare you? We love these schools. We need these schools. They're a part of our community, a vital part of our community." No, they're not. No, they aren't. If they cease to exist, your taxes would be lower. I mean, do you like paying taxes? Does everybody like that? It's nuts. Speaking of nuts, I got 2 from New Mexico. Get a load of this. This is from KOAT. Cicely threw this my way. Student with autism pepper sprayed by Albuquerque public schools, police say. This is an interesting one. I'm going to just sort of describe it for you. This particular student, whose father claims that his son is autistic, was essentially not running at a police officer, but he was sort of getting in the face of the cop without touching this police officer. And then again, there was some kind of a scuffle going on that didn't involve this kid, but this kid started to basically get involved with the police officer to some extent. He told the student to back up. The student didn't back up at all. And then the cop pulls out pepper spray and hoses him right in the eyes. I mean, I don't know. It's rather interesting, I think, but either way, the dad was certainly making plenty of excuses, for his son's behavior and what his son was doing. And then, of course, they cuffed him and brought him in. And then the police officer got questioned as to why he did what he did. And it's all on badge cam footage. And then, of course, was placed on administrative leave for a little while and currently under investigation, pending the outcome of an investigation. But yeah, there you go. Again, prion disease. Is the autistic kid jabbed? Well, we know he's jabbed with flu shots, hence the autism. But how about COVID shots? Again, it doesn't matter if he's autistic or not. You don't run up to a police officer, and do a pump fake like you're going to hit the guy, or at least again get in his face when he's trying to get you out of the way. That's usually not what you do. Here's another one. This is hilarious. It's titled, Lawsuit Alleges Student Was Hurt After Teacher Brought Swords to School and Let Students Fight. And this is on camera. So let me play this audio for you. It's absolutely hilarious. It's two high school students sword fighting in a classroom. And the teacher's leaning up against her lectern there, and she's watching them do this, and they are stabbing each other with these swords. And they are real. So here we go. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
911 was not called for about half an hour after this happened, which is shocking. That this little girl is bleeding in a classroom and that paramedics are not called for 30 minutes.
It is a sight you wouldn't expect to see in a Volcano Vista High School classroom or any classroom. Teenagers fighting with swords.
And as you see, it's caught on camera. One student seriously hurt with the parents now suing. Action 7 News reporter Andres Valle has details.
Our client says that the teacher said, I have a surprise for you guys.
That surprise is this.
Bro, give it to...
Teenagers fighting with swords inside a chemistry classroom at Volcano Vista High School. The teacher is seen here resting her hip against a podium, watching her students charge each other with weapons.
If I'm a parent and I take my kid to school, I think they're going to be safe. I think the teachers are going to protect them. And here, absolutely the opposite happened.
Jessica Hernandez telling me this happened May of 2022, and she's representing a student who was severely hurt moments after this video was taken, her right hand sliced in the process.
I've talked to her surgeon, and he described the way that as he was doing the surgery inside, he could actually feel where the sword had made a mark in the bone. She may not ever regain full motion or strength in her right hand, and she is right-handed.
The family now suing Albuquerque Public Schools for allowing this to happen. The civil lawsuit states that the teacher set a 2-minute timer for each sword fight and claims that once the student was injured, the teacher said, quote, I'm in trouble, and ordered her students to delete any videos of the incident.
911 was not called for about half an hour after this happened, which is shocking. That this little girl is bleeding in a classroom and that paramedics are not called for 30 minutes. So those are also procedures that APS needs to address to make sure that first this doesn't happen. But if a student is injured, what are you going to do about it immediately to make sure they get the care that they need?
And we did reach out to the school district for comment. APS did let us know that they cannot comment on any pending litigation. Reporting Albuquerque's northwest side, I'm Andres Valle for KOET, Action 7 News.
The teacher is no longer employed with APS, but it is unclear if she was let go because of this.
Are we really surprised? Does this really shock anybody? I mean, swords in the classroom. At this point, why not? Why not? You got a little time to kill. I want to have a free day, everybody. Let me set a minute timer and we can have sanctioned sword fights right in the middle of the classroom. Again, the whole thing is on video. You can see this actually happening. You don't see the female student get stabbed in the hand, or whatever student ended up getting stabbed in the hand. But you see, again, two of them sword fighting, and one of them is jabbing the ever-living hell out of this other kid in the chest. And they're going, time out, time out, time out. And they walk away. And again, the teacher's just chilling. This is the environment, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what else to tell you. They could be reading a book. They could be doing a million other things. But no, let's bring two swords to school in a classroom setting because that's appropriate by itself. And then, of course, let's ring the bell and have the sword fights commence. Honestly. You send, again, and the lawyer, bless her heart. I send my kid to school expecting to be safe. Do you? Do you? Is that what you expect during, a school day in this day and age, in these environments? You've got to be kidding me. Again, every single one-liner and every single sentence from all of these individuals involved, and I mean, it's all of them. It's so predictable. I mean, I could write an entire book about all of the cliche phrases that they use, and that would certainly be one of them. When I send my kid to school, I expect them to be safe. I expect the teachers to do the right thing. The safety and security of every student in our building is our number one concern. I mean, the list is endless of the stupid shit that comes out of their mouths. It's just nuts. But this right here again, this is this is the brainwashing. This is the demoralization. And speaking, ladies and gentlemen, of brainwashing and demoralization, I think the School Insanity Award goes to the Deer Creek School District in Oklahoma. I'm sure you heard of this one. It was making the rounds, of course, so allow me to get into this, which, by the way, this is interesting too because the state board superintendent for education there in Oklahoma is a rather based guy. I've played his video and his audio rather on the show here before. He hates basically everybody who's a leftist. He can't stand any of the DEI nonsense, and he calls it like it is, which is nice. Except he's got his hands full with this particular scenario. So this is from OKCFox.com. It is titled Deer Creek School District Responds After Video Shows Students Licking Toes for Fundraiser. Let me describe the video here. Again, I put it on Gab. It's bouncing all over the internet. You can take a look. It appears to be students and or staff, I believe students, and they are sitting in a row, and there's at least 3 of them on camera, sitting in chairs with, again, their shoes and socks off, and then there are male students on their stomachs at the feet of these individuals, and they are, again, licking their feet in the gymnasium. So let's get into it. Edmond, Oklahoma. Deer Creek School District released a statement Friday afternoon after a video was sent to Fox 25 that showed students licking toes during an event for the school's wonderful week of fundraising, quote unquote. It says, quote, "It was surprising," an anonymous student told Fox 25. I didn't think they were going to do that. I was just shocked. I didn't really have, a feeling. I was kind of disgusted and then kind of glad I wasn't over there," unquote. Another quote said, "Whenever she told me yesterday that was happening, I had to ask her, wait, what? They're licking peanut butter off of toes," an anonymous parent said. And then they said, what? Again. It says the week was spent raising money for Not Your Average Joe Coffee, which employs people with intellectual, developmental, and physical disabilities. It says, quote, "I am all for fundraising and all for really fun and silly things, but that right there just seems a little excessive," unquote, the parent said. The district said that on Thursday, Deer Creek High School hosted an assembly called Clash of Classes for students to pay and attend. Students in 9th through 12th grade volunteered to participate in different class competitions, according to the district. Deer Creek schools noted that every student who participated signed up for the games ahead of time and that no Deer Creek faculty or staff participated during the assembly. The district also said students were paired up with corresponding grade levels for the competition where students were seen in the video licking toes. And then, of course, it's making the rounds on X. It goes on and says, the district said $152,830.38 was raised for not your average Joe coffee during the fundraising week. Who cares? Who cares? Again, the irony. And I have to say, I have to do it. I have to say this. The irony of a school district raising money for the mentally handicapped who work at a coffee shop. I mean, who's mentally handicapped here? I mean, they might as well just be raising the money for themselves. Seems like everybody's retarded in this situation, doesn't it? honest to God. It says you can read Deer Creek School District's full statement below. Oh, let's read it, shall we? It says the following. I bet it says somewhere in here, the safety and security of everybody is our number one concern. Place your bets. Here we go. Quote, this afternoon, Deer Creek High School announced a grand total of $152,830.38 raised for Not Your Average Joe Coffee on an organization created to inspire our community by including students and adults with intellectual, developmental, and physical disabilities. Well, first of all, I would say that's not your job. It's not your job. Everybody should just go home. That's your job. Again, schools as fundraisers and the bake sales and the bullshit, all of it, it is so exhausting to me. I never participated in any of it. I didn't like any of it. What a waste of time. Anyway, that's my 2 cents anyway. I'm sure other people have differing opinions, and that's fine. Let's see. It says this total was raised through a week of events and activities at both Deer Creek High School and Deer Creek Middle School, all designed to bring our community together for an extremely impactful organization. Again, another quick little side note. Ladies and gentlemen, these people can't even teach their students to read and write. You understand that? I mean, they can't even teach them to speak English, but they have no problem wasting copious amounts of time doing whatever this is. Let's see. It says on Thursday, February 29th of 2024, Deer Creek High School hosted an assembly called The Clash of Classes for students who paid to attend. During this assembly, 9th through 12th grade students volunteered to participate in various student organized class competitions in the spirit of raising money for NYAG. It says all participants in the assembly were students who signed up for the games. They played ahead of time. No Deer Creek faculty or staff participated in any of the games during the Clash of Classes assembly. Many dedicated students gave generously of their personal time to achieve this momentous accomplishment. Yes, it was momentous, all right. Which will serve communities beyond the boundaries of Deer Creek. I'm sure it will. We would like to thank all of the patrons, businesses, and sponsors who contributed to the success of this year's wonderful week of fundraising. Honest to God. It then says, quote, this is separate now, that was their statement. So clearly they haven't accepted any responsibility for anything. It goes on here, again, based on just the text in the article, it says, it's really great that they raised a lot of money, the parents said. I feel like maybe they could have done a little bit more accountability and ownership in that statement for, hey, maybe we didn't fully think this thing through here, unquote. No kidding. It says State Superintendent Ryan Walters took to X Friday evening and said in part, we are cleaning up this filth in Oklahoma schools. And here was his actual statement. He said, this is disgusting. We are cleaning up this filth in Oklahoma schools. Our agency is investigating, unquote. That's the end of the article. So here's what you do. You find out who came up with this and you fire them. That's what you do. I would even go so far as to expel the students who were participating. Now, I know people would say, Sean, that's a bit harsh. They're innocent in all of this, and they were just doing what they thought they were allowed to do. Here's the problem. You have a room full of people who paid, again, to participate in stupid games so that money could be, go to some business in town. And ultimately, no one in that room said, what in the hell are you all doing? You all need to stop this now. People have cell phones. They're recording this. Do you think this is going to look good on the internet? Again, the brainwashing. It's beyond ridiculous. And this is also, I should say, this is always, and I mean always, indicative of a much larger problem within that environment. The simple fact that that was allowed to take place. And I should even say this, the simple fact that these fundraising things take place in these schools should show people that learning is not their goal. It's just not. It's fundraising for things, again, for a charity that has, it's not even a charity. It's someone else's business that has nothing to do with the school. It's a complete waste of time and energy. But this is, again, emblematic of the entire business. A waste of time and energy. That's what it is. That defines it in a nutshell. They haven't learned anything. Do you remember it was a very similar activity that occurred in another school in America approximately a year ago. It was at least a year ago, I think. And it was students and teachers, and they were doing that like, what the hell is it? Where you put like a ball or a balloon in between your chin and your chest, and you pinch it with your neck, and then you run up to somebody else and you do the exact same thing. It was something along those lines. Or it had something to do with like licking whipped cream off of students' faces or something like that. And it was teachers and students engaging in this activity, again, during a pep rally or something in the gymnasium of this school. Do you remember that story from, again, it was like a year ago or so? Did the people here in Deer Creek, Oklahoma not hear about that? Did they not learn their lesson? Apparently not. Apparently they didn't. Again, these are not thinking people. I wouldn't have these individuals that run these schools babysit a kitten. I wouldn't. They don't know the first thing about it. And again, outside of watching paint dry and paying them to watch paint dry, I would think that babysitting a kitten would basically be the easiest thing on the face of the planet. But hell, I wouldn't even pay them to watch paint dry. They wouldn't do it. They would get out of the chair, run around, do something else, fall into the wall that is soaked with wet paint, whatever it would be. These are not bright people. And look, again, the students themselves just willfully going along with this like it's fun or entertaining. You need to fire them. You need to fire the staff members who were involved in this, all of them, permanently. Again, this wasn't just organized by students. It may have only had student participants, but that doesn't matter. There's an adult in the room. There's supposed to be an adult in the room anyway. Adults came up with this. They certainly sanctioned the entire fundraising activity itself. Now, what games were being played and who came up with them? I don't want to say it's irrelevant, but it certainly plays a role. But again, the head of the snake here is who made the call to even allow this entire thing to take place? No one stepped in. They didn't even ask, okay, what games are you going to play before we get this fundraising thing going? Again, not to mention, what a waste of time. God, I hate these environments, don't you? I can't stand them. I just can't stand them. They're the laughing stock of our country. They're the laughing stock of our country. This is the profession. And of course, there's nothing professional about it. That pretty much tells the whole story right there in that one story, doesn't it? Honest to God. Here's another one, and this is tricky. And this is one of those things, again, that I've mentioned in the past where the headline sounds nice, but you need to be real careful because these people dig in like ticks, and they're not really going to go away. This is from alligator.org. It is titled, University of Florida Eliminates Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Offices. It says Chief Diversity Officer and DEI officers are among those fired. Now again, at face value, this is a very good thing. Here's the issue. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, as in ideology, which we know is anti-white. That's really what it means. It's anti-white people and what white people think and all of that. This divisive ideology doesn't have to exist as a department or within particular lines of work, okay? And specifically, I mean actual employed individuals. This is an ideology. And as a result of that, It exists and only has to exist in between the ears of individuals who believe that this is real. It's that simple. So they can get rid of, in the state of Florida, because it's now law, they can get rid of all the departments they want. They can get rid of all of the whack jobs that worked within those departments all they want. But the whack jobs who still believe it to be a real thing still exist at these universities. They're still there. They're not going away. And the students who believe these lies and these ridiculous ideologies, they too are still there. So again, congratulations on firing, half a dozen, or actually over a dozen people rather. Again, good for them. But the ideology still exists, and you can't get that out with a jackhammer. So here's what it says. UF fired 13 full-time diversity, equity, and inclusion positions and ended 15 administrative appointments for faculty Friday. It also eliminated the office of the Chief Diversity Officer and ended DEI contracts with outside vendors, according to the Friday memo, which is excellent. Let me read this memo, by the way. I have a copy of it right here, and here we go. This is from a J. Scott Angle, Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, along with the Vice President and General Counsel and the Vice President for Human Resources. The subject line is Compliance with BOG Regulation 9.016 on Prohibited Expenditures. It says the following, quote, "To comply with the Florida Board of Governors Regulation 9.016 on prohibited expenditures, the University of Florida has closed the Office of Chief Diversity Officer, eliminated DEI positions and administrative appointments, and halted DEI-focused contracts with outside vendors." Again, all good. You've got more problems there, but, it's a nice step. It says, under the direction of UF Human Resources, university employees whose positions were eliminated will receive UF standard 12 weeks of pay. These colleagues are allowed and encouraged to apply between now and Friday, April 19th, for expedited consideration for different positions currently posted with the university. So, again, like I said earlier, they don't necessarily go away. They're not kicking them off of a bridge, to cease to exist. They're being offered other jobs and the ability to, again, continue to work there if they want to. Not to mention, if they have tenure, those individuals are going to receive more favoritism as opposed to, of course, those who do not. So if there is an opening and the individual is already working there, they don't want to have to redo all the paperwork. They'll just move their position to somewhere else in the actual university itself. So they're not really gone. They're never really gone. It continues here, and it says, additionally, the Office of the Chief Financial Officer will reallocate the approximately $5 million in funds previously reported to Tallahassee for DEI expenses, including salaries and expenditures, into a faculty recruitment fund to be administered by the Office of the Provost. Finally, the University of Florida is and will always be unwavering in our commitment to universal human dignity. As we educate students by thoughtfully engaging a wide range of ideas and views, we will continue to foster a community of trust and respect for every member of the Gator Nation. The University of Florida is an elite institution because of our incredible faculty who are committed to teaching, discovering, and serving. If you have questions, please contact UF Human Resources at their website or phone number, blah, 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 blah. And again, who is the president of the University of Florida? You guessed it. Former Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse. Anti-Trumper and absolute lunatic. But thank God he lost and didn't seek office again, whatever it was. But yeah, he's dirty and always has been, and there you go. So again, you can get rid of the walls in which they meet. You can get rid of the title that they have as people or a department, but you can't get rid of the people. They just dig in like ticks, and that's what happens. So there you go. Okay. There was this one too out of New York. They're having more problems as you would expect. It is titled, New York Teachers Hold Jihad Means Struggle, Not Holy War, in DOE Anti-Bias Training, quote-unquote, disingenuous. The entire title of this article is ridiculous. So anyway, they basically, long story short, held an entire presentation or professional development meeting on what the definition of a jihad means, which is struggle or great effort. Because as we know, endless individuals are running around. Now, I'm of course not defending any of this. It doesn't belong, as you would expect, but I'm mentioning this because, of course, endless individuals who happen to be Jewish are running around screaming that this means that they want to kill us all. Again, everybody's basically playing the victim, and as we know, the entire Jewish lobby is controlling everything in Washington, D.C., and certainly controlling these institutions, and you do have Middle Eastern individuals who are Muslim who are attempting to stand up for themselves and one another, and again, unfortunately, or whatever you want to call it, they're using these opportunities in these politically motivated situations to basically try to educate one another on their own religions. And yet, remember, if you do anything regarding Christianity, well, that's not allowed. But if you're Jewish or you're Muslim, well, you can scream at the top of your lungs all you want. So I'm going to play this here, and this is an individual, again, describing the PowerPoint presentation that apparently was run by their Department of Education there in New York, and certainly in New York City regarding their teachers. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
What is jihad? The literal meaning of jihad is struggle or a great effort. Jihad is the Muslim concept of striving in the path of God. So in the next slide, you'll see the hashtag My Jihad media campaign for some examples. So my jihad is to never settle short of my best effort. My jihad is to not judge people by their cover. My jihad is to build friendships across the aisle. My jihad is to stay fit despite my busy schedule. So some common Muslim practices include shahada or declaration of faith, salat or prayer, zakat or almsgiving or charity, Som, which is fasting, and Hajj, which is the pilgrimage to the holy site of the Kaaba, which is in Mecca, Saudi Arabia.
Again, basically what they're doing with this is they're trying to make it sound like jihad means that you need to do more push-ups, that's my personal jihad. My personal struggle is that I don't do enough push-ups, so that's what I need to do. Yes, I'm sure that's what Allah had in mind. I'm sure that's what it says in the Quran, that your jihad or your struggle has to do with, losing a few pounds and remembering to go for a jog 3 days a week or something like that. Give me a break. Again, it has no place. Neither side in the equation has no place. But this, again, should prove that this is the environment. This is what it is. And I have to tell you, I mean, I'm really considering doing this. I might not do it, but I really am. In previous episodes, certainly well over a year ago, I've brought up in the past how the Midwestern Educational Research Association, again, a rather large Midwestern education conference, always meets in Cincinnati, Ohio. Again, it's about 50 minutes away from me. I'm really considering going just as an attendee, not to present. I just want to, show up and pay the entrance fee for a day and then get the booklet in the packet. It, of course, lists all the presentations and all the whack job individuals and where they come from and what they're planning on giving presentations about. In fact, I think the theme of their conference this year is something like, Can Research in Education Change Education? I'm not kidding. I think that's the actual slogan for the conference. Now, again, wrap your head around that. Can research in education change or influence education? I don't know who writes this crap, but these are not the sharpest knives in the drawer. But I'm seriously considering going. And then again, walking around with my cell phone and filming some of these presentations and filming some of these whack job people. And I'm even considering, again, engaging in a conversation with one of these whack jobs and just asking them if they'd be willing to talk. And then you can actually hear it out of their own mouths how these people actually communicate. Because let's face it, nobody in that conference is going to have their head on their shoulders. Nobody's going to be awake. You talk about plugging yourself back into the matrix and walking around in the matrix as an awake person. Education conferences these days are certainly the place where that could be accomplished. It really is. So I don't want to promise anybody anything, but it's one of the things that's rolling around in my head because it's local, it's close, and yeah. I kind of want to take the slings and arrows just in order to bring that information back to the listening audience here. Again, it would be absolute insanity. There's no doubt about it. Okay, anyway, I'm going to shelve that particular topic for another time. There was this too just the other week. This was actually almost 2 weeks ago. Teacher found dead at East Chicago school. This is actually in... Well, I'm sorry, the individual who was dead, Greg Jones, 47, of Gary, Indiana, was found by maintenance personnel at East Chicago Lighthouse Charter School around 6:41 a.m. Apparently, they died sometime that evening. It says he then called family for a ride home around 10:30 p.m., but when that family member arrived to pick him up, Jones never came outside. Says the family member never got a phone call from Jones and then left. Jones was discovered by maintenance personnel Saturday morning. The Lake County Prosecutor's Homicide Task Force was called to the scene to investigate, and there's no reason to believe that any foul play was involved, police say. The investigation is ongoing. So these dots are on top of each other. Let's connect them. School teacher, mid-40s, East Chicago Charter School, working late at night in the school, dies in the school building. No one else is probably allowed in. Doors are probably locked, we can assume. What is it that caused his death? If you put your chips in the center of the table and said COVID shot, you would be correct. Again, no foul play, no stab wounds, no bruises around the neck from strangulation, no bullet holes, COVID shots. That's what did him in. So, again, do people think that that's the only school teacher to die in school as a result of the COVID shots? Of course not. This is happening frequently. There's no doubt about it. Now here's what I want to do. Speaking of COVID shots in education, I want to jump in a time machine. And this was a document that was sent my way, and I think diving into these time machines is important to do. We have to exercise our reflective muscles here and remind ourselves of course, the brainwashing and the criminality in all of this, because these people have no idea what they've done. This was sent my way by a listener of the show. They know who they are, who live in Michigan and will remain anonymous. But this is from a school district called Wayne Westland Community Schools in Westland, Michigan. And it says the following here, and this is a letter or a memo or an email, certainly a letter, that was sent out by their superintendent, John Dignan, I'm saying that correctly, on January 18th of 2021. So, let's jump in the DeLorean, crank up the flux capacitor, and turn our date to January 18th of 2021. And let's read this letter together, shall we? Because again, this wasn't the only kind of letter like this that went out, but this right here again is one hell of a time capsule. It says the following. January 18th, 2021. Dear Wayne Westland Community School families, I know many of you have heard about the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine and have questions about when it will be available to teachers and staff in Wayne County. To date, approximately 17,000 educators in Wayne County, not including Detroit, have demonstrated an interest, it says, in getting vaccinated, which is promising news for the safety of our entire school community. Oh, joke's on them. As you may be aware, the vaccine is being rolled out on a county-by-county basis. The supply of vaccines that Wayne County has received from the state is currently very limited and is lagging significantly behind the demand. As a result of that limited supply, the Wayne County Public Health Division has not yet been able to reach all of the first priority recipients, Group 1A, which includes frontline medical workers and senior citizens living in nursing homes. That's right, because they were the most vulnerable, if you recall. It says, we have been informed it will be a couple of weeks before school staff can begin to get vaccinated. The county's target date is January 25th of 2021 for Group 1B, K-12 teachers and staff, to begin to sign up, but it will be some time before all staff has the opportunity to receive the vaccination. We are working with the Wayne County Public Health Division to help make that process as smooth as possible. That means coercion. It continues and says, the health and well-being of students and staff continue to be a top priority. There it is. And we are committed to providing you updates as information becomes available. In the meantime, we once again remind you to continue to adhere to COVID-19 safety recommendations made by the Wayne County Public Health Division. This includes wearing a cloth face mask covering or mask when in close proximity with others, practicing frequent hand washing, staying home when sick, and continuing to watch for potential symptoms of illness. Thank you for serving as a partner in education of your child, and for your ongoing patience and understanding as we continue to navigate these challenging times together. Should you have any questions on this matter, please do not hesitate to contact my office. Sincerely, John Dignan, Superintendent. Unquote. Isn't it amazing? I have to take a shower after reading that. These people have lost their minds. They did lose their minds. They believed all of it. Hook, line, and sinker. This very memo alone was responsible for the deaths of an incalculable amount of people. I wonder if this John Dignan superintendent understands that. My guess is no, he doesn't, if he's even alive. Absolutely amazing. They don't question a thing. They didn't question a single thing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is as fresh in my mind as something I did yesterday. I mean, it is that fresh. And this, it will never go away. The feelings of how fresh this was will never go away. And unfortunately, now that we're back in the DeLorean and back in real time here in 2024, the dead giveaway again that people have not learned their lesson. As again you heard me say in the Michigan board meeting, they keep saying these words as if it is a time period in our history. Back when COVID happened, or back during the pandemic. Again, they don't even hear what they're saying. COVID and pandemic are nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, you name it. But it's apparently a time period now. And that's the giveaway. Again, I hear it all the time. You watch an interview between people and they go, well, back when the pandemic was happening, there was no pandemic. There never was. Not ever. Again, the Brett Weinsteins of the world and the people going around that Senator Johnson roundtable from last week. The pandemic, COVID. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. That's the dead giveaway when you know someone is awake and when they are either asleep or they are controlled opposition. And there's some kind of a gatekeeper, is when they perpetuate these fake words. Again, you heard me read off Dr. Mike Yeadon's response to a lot of these gatekeepers, certainly the Brett Weinsteins of the world regarding his talk with Tucker and a number of other things. But as you would expect, again, Mike Yeadon's a bright man, and he knows what's going on here. He openly stated on Telegram last week again that the Ron Johnson thing and that whole talk, again, is remarkably ridiculous for a variety of reasons. He said, you have people going around the table saying things that are just not true. Again, specifically using the terms pandemic and COVID like they're real things. They aren't. Never were. It's amazing. It's not going to go away until we keep calling out these people. And that's all we can really do is keep saying, there was no pandemic. When somebody goes, the pandemic was serious. No, there was no pandemic. And when somebody brings up COVID, you look them in the face and you say, there is no COVID. There never was. It's not a real thing. Again, I've been over what the illness is and what the illness was. Some people said it was a bad flu. Well, the flu doesn't exist. So where did you get it? You got it because you got jabbed in 2019. You jabbed yourself in 2020. You were around people who were jabbed. That's why you got sick. That's why you got quote-unquote COVID, because you're hanging out with jabbed people. And, of course, they turned the 5G up to 11. And they installed 5G towers everywhere. That's why. Some people got sick. A lot of people didn't. And the lies just keep coming. The lies don't stop here. And again, the gaslighting continues to kick itself up to 11 on all of this. First of all, of course, as I'm sure you've heard, the CDC is now stating, as I'm sure is the FDA, that COVID is just like the flu now. That the same protocols that exist for the flu are basically exactly how we should treat quote-unquote COVID. That's it. Just like that, ladies and gentlemen, the CDC just admitted that they lied to you. That they've been lying to you since 2020. But don't worry. It's just like the flu. No big deal. No, it isn't. It was a coercion program designed to demoralize individuals, to trick them into taking a biological weapon. And it worked. Oopsie daisy. Sorry. You're jabbed with a bioweapon now. Now what? Again, this is something that's not going to go away. This is the perpetual boulder that gets thrown right into the middle of a pond, and it has a ripple effect that will not quit. It's creating waves where there never used to be waves, and never have been before. This is American history here. There's a piece of audio I want to play right now. Again, you've heard me bring this up on the show a long time ago. And I mean a long time ago. And I've brought it up consistently throughout. That making the same poison that is in the bioweapon COVID shot, ubiquitous across all shots, including flu shots, which, let's face it, it was in the 2019 flu shot. It was in the 2020 flu shot. That's why people were getting ill then. People were really getting ill back then, and of course, feeling terrible like they can't breathe and 1,000 other things, maybe because they received the flu shot back then. But now, we have this also, which is a brand new admission from the FDA, that they want the same mRNA poison inside of flu shots going forward. That they're basically working to create one kill shot that wipes out everybody. How many people are going to fall for this one? A lot of people are going to fall for this one, in particular children, and school districts that, of course, force these shots on people. Because again, keep in mind, it's not a COVID shot now. Now it's just a flu shot, but it's the same poison that's in the COVID shots. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
And while the Food and Drug Administration today proposing to make COVID shots a lot more like the annual flu shot, simplifying the process to one shot a year. The FDA will decide on Thursday whether to go forward with the idea. And at the same time, researchers are working on a new flu shot that will be a lot more like a COVID shot. Ursula Perry with how new technology is working its way into old vaccine protections.
The COVID pandemic required scientists to move fast, bringing vaccine technology that had been studied for years but not approved front and center.
And I think that when the world had an urgent need for vaccines, when SARS-CoV-2 virus hit that causes COVID, then it became an opportunity to test this new approach to vaccine development.
Traditional vaccines put a weakened germ into our bodies, but mRNA shots like the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines teach cells to make a protein that triggers an immune response if someone gets infected. Researchers take that mRNA template and can encode it for the flu or other infectious diseases. It would also make it easier to tweak during flu season if there's a different dominant strain that's circulating.
It's a technology that can be deployed pretty rapidly.
Dr. Obu Agu says the mRNA flu vaccine would not necessarily be better than the traditional shot, but it does mean more people would be protected.
Remember that some individuals do not tolerate the already approved influenza vaccine, so this gives them another option.
The mRNA vaccine for the flu is currently being studied, and we could have the results as soon as March. Meantime, other studies are underway on other vaccines for other diseases, including Lyme disease, rabies, HIV, and even Zika. Ursula Perry, KSAT 12 News.
Every single word in that news report, which was recent, is a lie. Every word of it. And it's legal to lie. Now again, they don't know that they're lying necessarily, but they're certainly not thinking. But again, every image they brought up was all CGI, and they're just simplifying the process, ladies and gentlemen. That's all they're doing. They're just trying to simplify the process and make it easier for us, so that we don't get ill. Well, you can't get ill if you're dead. And if the process is to kill you, which it is, then yeah, they're simplifying the process all right. They've simplified it to the point now where, again, the same poison is ubiquitous across just about every single shot that you could possibly imagine. How do people think this is going to end? How do they think this is going to end here? Here's another example of the gaslighting, and this is the last one I have. This is from the Daily Mail from last week. CDC panel is investigating whether RSV vaccine made by Pfizer is causing rare paralysis condition Guillain-Barré syndrome. It says inquiry was based on fewer than 24 cases of the syndrome, but the numbers are higher than expected, launching an investigation. They're launching an investigation into the RSV shot, causing the same things that the COVID shots cause, but they're not launching an investigation into the COVID shots. Do you see what's going on here? The RSV shot is the COVID shot. It's the same juice. Different label, same juice. Keeping in mind, too, they don't have to tell anybody about informed consent. And again, I'm not patting myself on the back here, but I wrote that Substack, what was that, the middle of last month? I just saw a video about it just the other day. Someone was like, people need to pay attention to this. There's no more informed consent in the trials, which means there's no more informed consent, period. It's gone. They've written it out of the law. Yep, they sure have. And now they're trying to gaslight people into believing that the signs and symptoms, or intentional side effects, so to speak, that arise basically out of one shot are only unique to that one shot, when they're not. There was no RSV shot, if you recall. I don't recall there ever being one before quote-unquote COVID and the pandemic, quote-unquote. They just hit everybody with that RSV shot this past fall, and people took it, and they're dying. So, yeah. I don't know what else to say. The gaslighting is thick. They're changing their scripts. They're putting new names on particular things. They're moving things around. This is a shell game, the likes of which people cannot comprehend. And it's still tricking people. They're still being duped. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing to me. Okay. Yikes. Lots of stuff there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for listening. God bless each and every one of you, and I'll catch you on Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.